to come out of college and just jump into freelance. I think it's the worst plan ever. Welcome back, episode 62.
62.
Yes, sometimes I say this is a special episode, but this is truly a special episode. We got the man made by James in the studio all the way from the UK.
Thanks, pal. Yeah, extra special.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Long
Extra,
trip.
yeah.
Just for the chop up as well.
All right,
it?
yeah. Flew all the way out here. We're doing this today, 45 minutes, and you're heading back, right?
I'm flying straight back. I
Yeah.
literally got in 20 minutes ago,
Yep.
here for a little bit, just
Yep.
this, then I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but it's the things I do for you, Dan.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love it.
Just kidding.
Yeah, just kidding. Yeah, just kidding. I've been here for ages. I'm ready
yeah.
to go home now. I am
know.
ready to go home. We just got back from Creative South.
Yeah.
One moto.
Yep. So you flew back, Creative South. You've been at the Lincoln House. Got to see One Moto that we do every year, which I was super stoked you could check that out.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, that place is wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
The industry, that culture, you know, and One Motor, that show, the event they've put on there is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Really nice.
Yeah,
Fun.
yeah.
And venue, sick.
I
Do you know what
told
I
you
mean?
the venue's its own place. Like that big metal warehouse thing is gnarly.
Yeah, it used to be where they broke down boats or something,
Yeah,
was it?
Yep. So it sits on the river. They'd bring the boats in, dismantle them, and sell the metal scraps. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Great place for a bike meet-up.
Uh-huh.
Mad.
And then you're off. Now you're off tomorrow. Off to crop.
Yeah, Texas tomorrow. So
Yeah.
we've gone from UK time to Columbus
To
time.
Columbus, 3 hours.
To Vancouver time.
Yep. West
Portland,
Coast. Yeah.
And then back to Texas
Yeah.
for crop, and then back home. So that was like 5 time zones, and don't know whether to poo, wee, don't know what time it is.
Brutal.
When do you? Well, my
Yeah.
body has no fucking clue what it's doing. But
Yeah.
it's been wild, you know. Very
Yeah.
kind enough to offer me the old Lincoln House.
Yes, glad you
which
can
is
hang.
always a lot of fun.
Yep. Cool. Perfect. Well, stoked to have you back on. We did this. I don't know what year it was, but it was episode 22.
I think you were still in the old Lincoln House, weren't you?
Yeah, we were in the basement. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, and it was via Zoom. You in the UK.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember it.
Yep.
22, 21, 22?
It must have been 21, 22.
Yeah.
Kind of ran through some of the branding and illustrations we did for you, and kind of talked about
They're
that whole
still
deal.
going strong.
Yeah,
They're
you're still
still
using
going
some of
strong.
that stuff, which is cool.
I'm selling pictures of my face now, mate. Do you know
Yep,
what I mean? On
exactly.
stickers. Do you know what I mean?
That's right, you are.
It's great.
You got your merch at
Yeah,
Creative.
well, yeah, the merch. I'll tell you
Creative
what,
South.
that merch. Yeah, lots of people have asked for bits and pieces for, a few years now. It's not going to be the thing that buys me my island.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
a tough gig, isn't it?
For sure.
But like for the first time at a conference, having the MBJ merch stall vending, it's just the meeting the people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're in that kind of conference mode, you're workshops, and then you're back sorting out your keynote, and then you're back on stage, and then you're at a party, and then but be able to kind of stand somewhere and talk to people.
Yeah.
I mean, I might get bored of it one day, but yeah, I can imagine it gets a lot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the moment, I just love speaking to the people, and it's also like for me, especially with those conference things, it's like, you get to all the people and the relationships that you've built online, the friendships.
Yep.
Like you spend so much time on this screen talking to people, and then you actually get to meet them in the reals. So
yeah.
for me, that's mad. And even like walking around One Moto, no fucker should know me from Adam there, but there's people coming up to me and
That's
going,
awesome.
"Are you made by James?" And I'm like,
awesome.
this big dude with a beard who looks like he could eat me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I love that.
That's cool.
So it's mad, isn't it? It's amazing the power of the internet.
It is. Yeah, it's wild.
The reach, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of mind-boggling from a little dude
Mm-hmm.
from the UK
Yeah.
who lives in a village called Shedfield, and my house is literally the shed in that field. Do you know what I mean? Like population, fuck all, 3,000 or something. So
That's crazy.
it is wild to
Yeah.
kind of come over here and have that kind of impact, I suppose. It's mad.
Yeah. It probably makes it all worth it, though. You think? Like, I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy doing, like you said, the merch table and going to conferences and meeting people that follow you online or say, hey, we watched the chop up or whatever it is. You're like, cool. Like, it's all worth it then, if people do notice you and come up to you and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I mean you're very similar to me in regards that we don't necessarily have to do it, but we do it because we want to do it. And I've always kind of especially had this mindset of like, it doesn't matter how big this becomes. I never set out for I never asked for this, but right. I feel now that I have a responsibility with it, to give back, to be accessible. That's what I love about Creative South and Crop. You eat together, you play together. It's the same Into the Woods. Do you know what I mean? Everybody stayed at the same place. Everybody drank together. Everybody partied, played together, workshops together. So, and that's what I love about those kind of conferences.
Honestly, like as a speaker, and if, people listening, if you're ever asked to be a speaker, like there's more to it than just, like you said, just showing up, doing your talk and leaving. Like so many people are buying tickets to kind of at some point run across you, talk to you, say hi, and even myself, when I go to them, like I'm there, if I'm going to do a talk or a workshop or merch, I'm also there to meet some of the other people that are there talking or speaking or whoever, or just attendees like, oh, cool. Oh yeah, I know your page. Like, cool. Nice to finally meet you, So like that whole mentality of like, I mean, people are busy. So, there's times for sure you fly.
I think you're also being kind.
Well, yeah, but people fly in and fly out, like you said, and it's like there's more to it than that. Like the whole conference thing is about meeting people.
100%. You think about Into the Woods. Yeah. You think about what for example, Tyler. I met Tyler at Into the Woods because I signed up to his workshop, even though I was a speaker and I wanted to learn. And now he's an investor in my company and helping me build this education space. And that would never have happened without being at that conference. So
exactly.
This idea of, I think it's very easy to kind of have that comfort zone. Knowledge is accessible more than ever, thanks to Reels and Instagrams and online chat, Google, ChatGPT, and all these things. Like knowledge is so accessible, but like there's nothing better I've learned over the last few years of being in a fucking field with 300 other designers, all love the same thing, the community aspect of it. And it's like people talk about how lonely the design world can be sometimes, especially with the rise of freelance and all the rest of it. So actually going out and meeting your peers and, as I said, meeting people that you've spoken to online and actually going out for dinner with them and going out for drinks with them or whatever it is, I don't think you can beat it. But it's also the connections. Do you know what I mean? Like, sure. There might be budding graphic designers looking to scale their agency and bump into a web designer who can help them do that, or they can partner with. So you just don't know until you put yourself out there. And something that I've definitely learned is like the more I put myself out there, the more opportunities seem to happen. So it's not easy for everybody getting on camera. If you had told me fucking 5 years ago you'll be speaking on stage, I'd go,
never,
not for me. Not for me. I don't think that's the road that I'm walking. But as you keep trying, you keep putting that effort in, and the opportunity comes, you either say yes or no. And if you say yes, you grow. If you say no, you don't. So got to have that drive.
Absolutely. And I think getting outside your comfort zone, like it can be so easy, especially on the freelance side and stuff. Like you have your daily routine and you have your work and you're at your house or even in a studio like this, and weeks go by and you're comfortable. It's like, hey, on Wednesdays I should do this, and on Mondays I do this, and to pause and stop your work to go to a conference or to do a speaking gig that you're asked to do, or a merch table, like it's not comfortable for most people, but then you do it and you're like, fuck, that was great. I'm so glad I did that, and so you have to do that. That was like with Into the Woods. That was not comfortable for any of us. Like when none of us have ever put on a conference, none of us are super like, hey, give me the mic, let me jump on stage, so the whole thing was very out of our comfort zone, but in the end, and looking at the whole process, like so rewarding. And so glad we did it, So, I think at some point, you just got to think to yourself, like, can I do this? It might be rough and it's not really what I do, but go for it anyways.
Yeah. But what do you think? I'm going to interview you now. Let's slow your roll, Dan. Let me
we're
just
talking to James.
Let me just take my seat, get comfortable. So like from from my experience, it's definitely come through having a bit of a more confidence in myself, understanding what I bring to the world, understanding what I bring to my clients. But there's so much confidence you build within that client space. When it comes to like breaking comfort zones, it's purely just a matter of just saying, like you say, like once you do it once, it gets easier and easier and easier. First time I got on stage, shitting it. Yeah. I'm still shitting it, but I'm shitting it slightly less. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So, exactly. Like, what would you say? What kind of advice would you give to anybody who's feeling? Because this is what happens: is people, they feel like they're in a rut, don't they? And that rut is usually a comfort zone. Yeah. You're making the same amount of money every year. You are doing the same kind of work every year. Yeah. You think that there's something more, but you possibly don't try to get it because you're comfortable or there's a risk. Like, how would you get people to, like, how did you guys go about like breaking that comfort zone?
Yeah, to me, it's like, and a lot of times, I've heard like, well, I don't really have the money to do that, or, which is always, can be the case. To me, it's like you need to reach out to people in the industry, and it doesn't have to be going to a conference paying $400 or $800 for the ticket. Maybe it's just that email, maybe it's reaching out on LinkedIn, whatever it is, and starting a conversation to kind of get the ball rolling. Like even with somebody with like Matt from Crop or a speaker that's going to Crop, and just kind of get their feedback on like, how could I get there? Because we brought some students out into the woods because the price was expensive, right? Not everybody can go to that. Yeah. And stuff. So we sponsored some people to bring them out there, and they didn't have to pay a dime, and they were younger students, and it was like, hey, we want you to just experience this, So to me, it's just like, get out there and ask. If you don't ask, like, you don't know, right? So ask to talk, ask like, hey, can I get involved? Can I volunteer? That's things
that's
too.
A good one.
Yeah, that's things too for these conferences. Like a lot of times they'll bring you out and basically put you up and you're a volunteer. You're there working, but you meet everybody, and then you figure out next year, how do I pay to go to this?
Yeah, but you also, when you do volunteer, you generally don't work every single day. No. You'll do like a shift. Yeah. So you'll still get to experience the conference, won't
Absolutely.
You? But maybe just work a particular night or a particular morning. Yep. So you usually have a rotation there. Yeah. Another thing that I think is quite important which is something that I started to do, was almost build in like a little pot. Do you know what I mean? So every year you set aside, X amount of money to be able to maybe just go to one conference, or even if it's 1,000 or 1,500, whatever you can push to. But this is for like learning. This is for conferences. This is for something, Because I think what happens is it becomes more, rather than kind of a proactive thing, it becomes a reactive thing. Oh, this conference is coming. Oh, I haven't got enough money. Yeah. Whereas if at the beginning of the year you're planning for, say right now, if you're planning for 2025, and I've got $1,000 in my head, which is going to be for courses, a conference, you can make sure that you squirrel that away. Because I think, that learning side of it and getting out of the office is, it's what I think kind of, when you're here, it allows you to just level up a little bit. And absolutely. Even just talking to people and talking to people about design helps you with clients, helps you with all sorts of shit, doesn't it? So little budgets for learning in conferences, I think is the way forward.
And then if you're at a company, even if it's not if you're in-house for a company that, just has a small little marketing, division, you're in there, you're a designer, reach out to your boss. Most companies have money set aside for education. Yeah. And if you tell them, hey, this conference is coming up, I'd love to go. This is why, this is what it's about. A lot of times
they'll often pay for it.
Yeah, they'll pay for that, so.
Yeah. So hit up your boss.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. That's what I do to Dan now. Yeah. He's my boss. Dan, can you pay for my flights?
Right. So Made by James, part of the Lincoln team. Made by James is shifting pretty heavily to going full education. Yes, sir. Which I love. I think it's a super smart decision on your part. It's something that I told you like a year or 2 years ago. we thought we were going to get into the education space.
Yeah.
We filmed an episode here kind of on branding.
It was just before Into the Woods, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It was like 6 months before Into the Woods, and we were trying to work on both at the same time. And it finally got to this point where I'm like, you know what? No. Let's pause on this education piece. Like
it's a lot.
We got a fucking event where there's 300 people showing up. Like we got to do this, you know? So we did, but kind of going through that whole process, just to film like a part of the first class was very daunting. Like, I mean, I don't think you can do it right unless you do it full time. I really don't. I think you can do pieces here and pieces there, and you can put a lot of time in and do like one big modular, and then you never do it again for the next 5 years, you know, and you got this thing you're trying to resell over and over. But to like update it and like really be on top of it and offering new stuff to people to keep them coming back, like it's a full-time thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not what we do, you know? And then I also looked at like, do I enjoy teaching? Am I a teacher? Is that like what I want to do? Is that what these guys want to do? If I'm going to ask them to stop designing, right, and come shoot, you know, a full day an episode, you know, to do this, like, is that what they signed up to do when they were hired at this company? Like, no. You know what I mean? So I just kind of sat back and was like, this is not what any of us really do, you know, so why try and force it? So yeah. I mean, you know, because you are now full into it and transitioning, you know, to that. So yeah, I want to hear more on kind of that. And you had even told me that you were a teacher back in the day as well, which to me makes sense. Like seeing you online and the way you communicate with people and bring people together as a community, I'm like, yeah, man, like this is what you do. You know?
I appreciate that.
So.
It means a lot coming from you, sir. Obviously after all the drug dens and being a little twat when I was younger, you know, obviously I went through this process of trying to find myself, and art was the thing that kind of saved me. Do you know what I mean? And a part of that early journey was a PGC, which is a postgraduate certificate in education, I think it is, where you basically get a piece of paper that allows you to teach. I went back and taught at a school I used to go to, but I was early 20s. The people that I was teaching were like 12, 13 years old. So I didn't have a fucking clue who I was at that stage, let alone trying to help these people get into the real world. So obviously continued my design journey, and to this point where I'm sitting here with you now. And a couple of years ago, I started diving into this kind of education space. I built my first Logo Legends course. And it was that thing. It was exactly what you said. I was stopping client work to film, edit, build a curriculum, shoot it, create all the stuff for it, and then once it was done, selling it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you think you've done it, and then you got to sell the fucking thing. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, and then building newsletters and building all the things you need to give it the best possible chance of success. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, it's wild. But then once it was finished, I then go back to client work. Yeah. And I was doing this for a couple of years. And then as I've evolved, as I've lent more into, you know, the education space, I suppose we'd call it, you know, pulling stupid fucking faces on Instagram, do you know what I mean? All that crap. You know, trying to, you know, obviously being more on stage, traveling the world and trying to give as much free stuff as I can to people. It's kind of become a lot clearer for me, the person I want to become. Like for 20 years, I've been very heavy on building my clients' dreams. And I've always had this dream to, you know, I'm always trying to push myself, like what's next. And I think there's a space for me in the education space. So as of 2024, I decided to lean in. And when you talk about this duality, do you know what I mean? There was a quote I read in a book, which was, the man who chases two rabbits catches neither. For a long time, I was chasing clients and I was chasing designers. I wanted to help clients, I wanted to help designers. And you can't do both well, especially, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it really, really well. So got on the phone with you. I was like, Dan, love you, Dan. But you know, in all honesty, I was like, this is my idea. This is the thing I want to do. Still have a lot of clients that I need looking after. Still bringing a lot of leads. What can we do? Because there's not another agency on the planet that I think aligns with Made by James or the stuff that I do better than Lincoln. And you were kind enough to not hang up on me at that point. And we got chatting, and this is obviously now Lincoln is the place where the client work gets serviced, and what that does is it frees me up, gives me a little bit more time with the freaking great team we've got here, to be able to execute that stuff, and then I can remove myself from some of that process stuff to be able to lean a lot more into this education. So whereas before I was maybe 90% client work, 10% education, I'm now very much the opposite way around, like 90% education, 10% client work. So which is it's difficult. We talk about risks, comfort zones, trying to break those. It's a calculated risk to some degree, but it's going well. Do you know what I mean? First quarter Q1's good.
That's cool.
So yeah, happy.
That's cool. I think and that's what I was telling you. And when we thought about doing the education piece, we wanted to do it different than say, Skillshare or domestic. There's ones out there, right? Where I was like, if we're gonna do it, I want to do it a little bit different. And I think yours are different. The way you present yourself, whether it's online or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be super buttoned up. You know what I mean?
There's nothing buttoned up about this dude.
Right. That's a good thing. I mean, that's what I like, and that's how we would have done it, where it would have been, it's like who you are, and people love who you are. So they want to hear more and learn more from you. Yeah. There's enough people out there who are very buttoned up, keeping it very rigid, and you do it like this. And, so to have fun with it, and supply an education that it's not dry and just boring, it's needed in the space. Yeah, and
I think I, again, appreciate that. I think this is where, for a long time I thought dyslexia and ADD or attention fiddle a lot, probably see me wiggling my hands around as I'm doing all this, but it's become almost a superpower when it comes to that kind of education. I very, very, fortunately have people tell me it's like whenever I take a course with you, it feels like I'm in the office with you, because I can't script shit because I can't read. Do you know what I mean? Right. I can read, but I can't read quick enough. So the idea of having a prompt, I would just not be able to do it. So I have a slide in front of me, and I look at it, and I go, well, I'm just going to talk about it. The problem is with that, a 3-hour course turns out to be 7.5-hour course. I could see that. But I mean, you know me, mate. I like to talk. So this idea of, I think it does, for me, rather than kind of worrying about it or seeing it as a barrier, I now use it to my advantage. Do you know what I mean? So, and like you say, there are a lot of people who teach in a different way, and maybe the way I teach maybe doesn't resonate with certain people, but it seems to resonate with enough people. But I think it's also this idea of trying to, whatever I do teach is always from my own experience. I never try and tell anybody this is the way you should do it, because I know, and our industry is very different. We were talking about this the other day. You can't just take an approach from for example, an attorney's or a lawyer's. There's certain rules and there's certain ways of doing things, and you can copy and paste all the things. A design agency or design is super unique to the individual. How some people learn is different to other people. The process is different. The creative process, the business process. I mean, there's obviously certain things we have to do, have contracts, proposals, and all that kind of shit together. But ultimately, as long as we get from this point to this point with a project, doesn't matter what that journey looks like, as long as you get there. Kind of always trying to make it fun, because it's I grew up in a design world or creative world that was fun. Do you know what I mean? I loved being a creative. I loved the fact that there was no rules. Seems to be a lot of rules being made. If you're not doing it this way, you're wrong. And I'm but this is obviously the social media side of it, where we know that that's not necessarily the case. So I'm always trying to make it a little bit more real
Yeah.
for people. And yeah, I mean, and the other side of it is I actually enjoy it.
Yeah,
I know
that's
people who have
exactly.
like stopped
Yeah.
stopped work to build courses, like you were kind of mentioning
Yeah.
a little bit about yourself. I absolutely love like building the stuff, figuring out how to break down information into the most simplest. I'm like, if this idiot can understand it, a lot of idiots are going to understand it. Not that everybody else is an idiot here, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
trying to make it like there was somebody, I can't remember her, was it Cynthia at your Into the Woods?
From Walmart.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah, and
Uh-huh.
she said something that really has always resonated with me. Since that moment, it was like my job as an educator or whatever it was is to make the strange familiar and the familiar strange. And I was like, holy shit! Do you know what I mean? That's quite powerful stuff, because everybody is seemingly in the design world right now trying to overcomplicate stuff.
Yeah.
They're making
Absolutely.
up words.
Yeah.
They're making up titles for themselves
Yeah.
to make themselves seem more unique.
Mhm.
But what it is, if they don't understand it, how the fuck is the client going to understand it? So I've always gone with the opposite approach of like idiot proof.
Yeah.
If James can understand it, I can get other people to understand it. And that method
Yeah.
seems to be working
Yeah.
ultimately, which is
Yeah.
good, isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
great.
Idiot proof
Yeah.
design.
There you
Idiot
go.
proof design was made by James. You know what I
That's
mean?
perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what why people gravitate towards you and even what you present online and social media, they love it because it's real,
Yeah, and I think, I mean, social media, trying to be something that is a little bit real in a world that isn't particularly real
Yeah.
is, again, probably a little bit of a superpower. Because, I was saying, so I was going to have a drink, but I'm talking again now. This whole idea.
I'll do that
You got to
for you.
give me time to drink. What are you talking about? This idea, like, and I'm not going to sit here and claim that it wasn't me as well, but when I started my design career, I was always trying to pretend to be something that I wasn't to potentially get work that I didn't really want.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I pretended to be all corporate and clean
Yeah.
and strip my personality back, thinking that would get me the clients that
The
I
big
wanted,
money
the
or-
big
yeah,
money,
big
and all
money
this kind of
jobs and-
stuff.
yeah.
And it's totally the opposite. What it did was get me a load of work that was boring, soulless. I mean, probably my clients from 15 years ago don't have a fucking clue. Can't remember who I am. My beard's grown a little bit since then as well. But do you know what I mean? It paid the bills, but it wasn't exciting. And the more and more and more I've kind of lent into this and, got sober and so really started to lean into my personality and who I want to be in the world and not hiding from all the things from my past. Do you know what I mean? Just I had this kind of idea of like, I'm just going to tell everybody everything because then nobody's got anything on me.
Yeah.
And then I've got no excuse. Do you know what I mean? So, but this idea, and I know that there'll be a lot of designers maybe watching this chop up kind of thinking like, well, that's what I'm doing. And
Right.
it doesn't matter if you are doing it
Yeah.
because it's whatever I think we all do to some degree. We get into this new space and then we kind of like figure out who we are. And there is a bit of a journey to that. It doesn't just... Unless you're Lincoln, do you know what I mean? But that was probably a little bit of a journey, wasn't it? Like the more and more you lean into it,
Absolutely.
the more stuff that you do, like the crazy shit we're doing here at the moment, the more people ask for the crazy shit that you're doing here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But you can tell a Lincoln product, brand, anything that you've touched, you can tell it's Lincoln. Do you know what I mean? That was something that I always respected about Lincoln. But like, I think there has to be this process of you figure it out and then you find the thing that makes you unique and then you've got to lean in.
Yeah.
Because if you don't lean in, the other people that do lean in are going to win.
Yeah.
You've got to try and find what makes you you. But it does take a little bit of time.
It does. It's all, in some ways it's all time,
Yeah.
Some of it's timing, but overall you got to put your time in, even with like Lincoln and people saying, oh, like, I can tell, or it has that look. Well, that look took 10 years, to get to that point. So it doesn't, and that's where I think a lot of people, might look at you or me or Lincoln and be like, I want that, and it's like, well, cool, start working towards that. And maybe on that journey, you get halfway through it and you decide you don't want that, or you discover really who you are and it's not exactly that, and you go in a different direction, you know. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people chasing the success of other people, and in regards of like they see people being successful doing a certain thing, and think that's possibly what they should be doing. And then as you say, getting 2 or 3 years into it and going, what am I doing? Where am I going?
I mean, I've said over and over, like, I would not, like, I have a lot of people, you know, just like how'd you get to this point, or you know, give me advice on running an agency. I want to start one, and I want to eventually be, you know, in your position. And I'm always like I'd say a lot of people don't. Like, you think you do.
I don't want your job.
This
exactly. Guy, I mean, you you work 7 days a week.
Yeah, and I've always said, like, it's not for everybody, right? I've, like, in some ways given up the last 20 years of my life to owning a studio, you know, and it's become my life and my family's life, and it's 7 days a week, and like, there is no side project for the family friend or like, you know, I want to do a little side work to get a little extra money in my pocket. No, hell no. Everything you do goes back into the studio, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, you know, like we were talking about earlier, like, you know, sometimes you always think it's so much better on that side, and it isn't always, and it's not always for everybody. You know?
That's what they say, isn't it? The grass isn't always, the grass is greenest where you water it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? But like, even just from your perspective, like you went from, you know, since I saw you in LA, it feels like every time I talk to you or text you, you're in a different country, doing a different meeting, Disney, Creative South. Mm-hmm. You come back here straight into one moto show. Like, tomorrow is probably the first day you're probably going to... is nothing.
But tomorrow I got to take the whole RV that's full of shit from the whole weekend and unload that thing and bring it in here, and there's inventory and like...
But that's my point. Case in point is like it's... Yeah. You know, the idea of looking up to you, which, I mean, you're a big inspiration for me, but I know how hard you work. Yeah. And I know, you know, I know the weight that you carry, do you know what I mean, with all of that stuff. And it isn't just like everybody sees, like, head of Lincoln, that must be the coolest job on the planet. Yeah, it is the fucking coolest job on the planet, but don't stop. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. And I think that's the difference between, you know, somebody like yourself and maybe somebody who doesn't want it as much. You know, it's that discipline to, you know, even after 25, 30 years, still 7 days a week, starting at 8 a.m., whatever it was on the weekend, finishing at 10 p.m. Do you know what I mean? Vending at events. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fucking wild when you think about it.
Absolutely.
You know, you need to fucking retire. That's what you need to do. Right. Just sell me Lincoln. That's what you should do. And if I don't want to do it either. Exactly. I don't want to do that. Yeah. Get Dustin to do it. He'll do it. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah. It is wild. Like, the amount of effort that goes into building the machine. Yeah. You know, you see all the pretty artwork, the cool brands, but that doesn't happen by mistake.
No, exactly. Yeah. But like, to your point on your journey, like you figured out on this path that, like, hey, that's not exactly what I want and what really makes me happy. So let me, and this is, so let me steer in this direction, you know?
Yeah.
And everything you did leading up to this point has got you to a point where you can turn the bus and go in that direction, and is going to be successful. Like, you couldn't do that education piece without all the years of design and, you know, and everything. So
true. I think it's also the frame, isn't it? Or the lens. Like, I want to bring positive impact to the world through my design work, which is still something that I want to do and want to be a part of. But like, I've only got so much time that I can do that. So by helping other designers, theoretically, and a whole generation of designers learn to do what I've done, you know, and bring insight from Lincoln and my other friends who have been in the design world for 20, 25 years plus, you know, pre-social media, do you know what I mean? Where it was a very different design world, you know. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, like, how can I bring more impact? How can I help more clients? And I know if I help a generation of designers, you know, get close to a Lincoln, like, each of those individual people is going to help a bunch of clients. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If I do that by myself, I can only help these many clients. By helping this new generation of designers, I can grow that and scale that impact. You doing it the right way, being honest about, having good process, creating good customer experiences, collaboration, trying to give people all the tools they need to not just support their clients, but to support their families and build, buy their own houses and, all the impact that it can bring. So even though my impact has slightly shifted away from just helping clients, I still get to help clients in some way because, still with a little bit through Lincoln, but also through the people that I'm helping to be the next Lincoln.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's cool.
Not that anybody's going to kick you off your spot, mate. I promise.
I mean, I think it's like this industry is going to change a lot in the next 10 years. I mean, I think it already has, from 10 years ago till now, and just with social media and Instagram and how much that has changed and what you need to do to even be a part of it or anything. So I think now more than ever, like young designers do need help in kind of navigating that, do you go to college? Do you do online classes? Is that enough? Do you just jump off into freelance? Do you go work somewhere first? Like, there's so many options in our industry to get to a similar point or on a similar path, that I think now more than ever, I couldn't imagine coming out of college right now and kind of being like, okay, which direction do I go? The internet's telling me that I can just do freelance right away.
And earn £100,000 next week or dollars next week.
And I'm going to be super successful and everything. And I've always said, worst idea ever. Yeah. Worst fucking idea. Like, that is my biggest thing when I talk to, I did a talk with a senior class, and I was just like, I think it's the worst plan ever is to come out of college and just jump into freelance. Because I've said my business is successful based on relationships that I've made over the last 25 years in the industry. A lot of those relationships were made in the first 5 at DC Shoes. Yeah. A lot of those people I'm still working with today. I can point to clients and why they're here and how they got here, and these people went to different companies and hired, and you do good work and you treat people right, they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to hire you for another job from another company, right? Without those first 5-6 years of like in-house at a company, like I do not think the clients we have would not be what they are.
No, and I've had a very similar conversation. Like the best freelancers now are people who have worked in an agency for 10 to 15 years,
absolutely.
Built those relationships, understand those processes. They've made their mistakes on other people's dime.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I made some big mistakes when I was starting off, but if I'd made those mistakes as a freelancer, I wouldn't be designing now because they would have cost me a fucking fortune. Do you know what I mean? But then again, like you say, look, the world is changing.
It is changing.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we grew up, in a world where, the only option was really get a job. Yeah. Get a design job. Now, but we also had to go to the library to learn shit. Do you know what I mean? No, like, my internet wasn't quick enough. No, so
for sure. And that's where they do have so many options.
I mean, it's the accessibility to knowledge, isn't it? But the problem is with that, it can cloud judgment. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because you see X person doing this and telling you something which might not necessarily be true. Yeah. And then you fall into this, well, I can do it. It's possible. And then 1 year, 2 years. So I have people like wanting to give up after, 6 to 8 months because they haven't had their first client yet. Right. And I'm like, what are you doing to get these clients? I'm just sharing work. Yeah. On Instagram, it's like they haven't got a website, they haven't got their own logo, it's just, it's wild. But I even like when you were talking about like this growth kind of thing, this idea of like what's happening next, I'm talking about building the next Made by James website, and we're like, fucking hell, like 10 years ago, all I wanted was a website. Now I'm talking about building these like immersive worlds where you can go into rooms and build communities. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? Do you know what I mean? And also, I'm not that rich. Exactly. But I think with this, we'll drop into AI very quickly because I think it's such a divisive. Those 2 letters within the design world right now are super. Like, there are half of the design world who are looking to embrace it, and then there's half of the design world that are literally rebelling
Yeah.
against it.
Well, that's great. That's just fucking great, man. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do?
I heard there was a talk at Creative South. I don't even want to. I didn't see it, but that people left and were flustered about, and I'm kind of bummed I missed it. But it was
might have been Nick Longo's one.
I think it was, and it was
one.
in regards to AI, and I didn't get the whole exactly what it was about. But like to your point, yeah, it's kind of like there's like a line of like,
there is,
you know,
it's like tug of war.
Yeah.
Right now. But I think ultimately, I mean, like with anything, like the birth of anything, it's always change, comfort zones.
Yeah.
That we've done it we've done it this way for so long. Why does it need to change?
Yeah.
You know, our job's gonna go. But this idea of like these young guys and girls coming through, you know, this is gonna be what they know.
Yeah.
Now the tool, the AI itself is a tool. You know, it's only as good as the creative mind that's being that's helping
that's
it come up with the things, or you're training it. Now, I think the people that rely solely on it are the people who will lose, especially within the creative world. You know, funny enough, it's been, you know, a year or so possibly since it's really started to embed itself into the creative world, and I don't Google anything anymore. I just use ChatGPT. Whenever I've got any question, that's what I do. And that's not just in my job, that's in life.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how quickly, like for 20 years, I've Googled it. And
so
now
you just switch tools. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're both
exactly.
a tool, so you switch.
But one tool's better than the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you jumped and you're starting to use that one. You
Exactly.
know?
And it's like the same with anything. Like when, you know, the iPad came out and people went from their sketchbook to iPad, you know, it's just another tool, isn't it? And let's talk, AI's been around for a long time. We're just using it in different ways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like all the software that we're using is a shortcut, isn't it?
I heard somebody talking about like when Photoshop came out and it kind of got into like version 2 and 3, they're like, photographers are done. It's over.
Yeah.
Like you can take these photos and do shit. Photography, don't need them. You know, this and that. It's like bullshit like that. You know, photography never changed. You know, it was a tool that you could use to you know, manipulate a photo or whatever, but it didn't, you know.
They also said that about painters, didn't they, and artists. Do you know what I mean? This whole idea of, you know, what's the next thing? You know, it's gonna, these people are dead. You know, but it's not going to be that way. I think. I mean, ultimately, I know we got to kind of wrap it up. I think what I would suggest for creative people is not to let your ego get in the way. You know, I think it's easy to be in that comfort zone. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean like try. Do you know what I mean? Use it as a part of your process. Use it to, you know, don't go into like certain software. I'm not going to name any of them, but you know, and just say create a logo and then give that to your client. But when, like, I've used it a lot for discovery process, you know, as somebody who's dyslexic, it helps me write my emails. Do you know what I mean? It helps me with my spelling. Do you know what I mean? When I'm trying to get this point across, I put that into chat, for example, ChatGPT, and it helps me understand, or maybe use different words to be able to, you know, like, how can I use this voice for this particular brand I'm working with? Can you give me some examples of how this voice works in a sentence, in an email? So it helps me give more to my clients, which helps me to up my value, which helps me to charge more. And it's not going away. I think that's where we need to leave it. It's not going away, but it's like with anything, you know, it's only as good as the person inputting into it, and that's the creative, and it's going to change our space somewhat. It's definitely going to change the education world. It's definitely going to change how design studios work, I think, and with reference to their process. You know, I think ultimately you got to somewhat embrace it and not be scared of it. Because in 10 years' time, motherfuckers, crikey, it's going to be rife.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, love it. Glad you could spend some time out here in the Northwest with us, and we get to hang out, and you'll be back again.
I'll always be back.
Yeah.
I can't believe we finished on AI either.
I know, right?
I feel so sad. But I also think it's important. Do you know what I mean?
It is
like
important.
you know, even as two old bastards, do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We're looking to embrace this new tech. And you know, like you say, I'm going to be back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm part of the team now. You can't get fucking rid of me
can't get rid
unless
of
you sack me. You know what I mean? But then I'll just dish you on Instagram.
Oh shit! And I might be coming out there to see you at some point as well.
Yeah, we're gonna go and check out some stuff in the UK.
Yeah.
Go and see some clients
Yep.
in London town and go and see some cool brands.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I Love Dust, P&Co.
Yeah.
Anybody else you think we should go and see?
Yeah,
Just
if you guys got any people in London in and around that area?
Yeah, we're me and Dan are going to do a little tour of the UK. So
Yeah,
let us in, buy us coffee.
absolutely.
And we like cakes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, James likes cakes and hats.
Coffee and tea.
Yeah, I'm just there for the merch. Dan's there for business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate you, pal.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks.
All right. Whoop, whoop.